The miraculous mass healing.
On this memorable Sabbath, after the two supposed miraculous healings, the entire town of Capernaum was in a state of excitement. Everyone who was sick or had an ailment made preparations to go to Jesus as soon as the sun had set. According to Jewish laws, it was not permissible to seek healing during the sacred hours of the Sabbath. However, as soon as the sun disappeared below the horizon, dozens of men and women with various diseases and ailments made their way to Zebedee's house. The faith of these people stemmed from a combination of wonder for Jesus and the rumor that he had already healed 2 people that day. Moreover, people reminded each other of the text Jesus had used in his sermon that afternoon in the synagogue. Jesus had spoken with unprecedented authority that afternoon. His message was so compelling, not appealing to human authorities, but speaking directly to the conscience and soul of the ordinary individual. Although he did not resort to logic or legal constraints, he made a powerful, clear, and personal appeal to the hearts of his listeners. Shortly after the sun had set, while Jesus and the apostles were still talking at the table after the evening meal, they heard voices outside. When one of them went to see who was there, he saw that a large crowd of sick people had gathered beside the house. The street was filled with people, all seeking Jesus. When Jesus stepped out the front door, he was struck by the sight of so many suffering people. He saw hundreds of people with diseases and ailments. The sight of all these afflicted mortals, men, women, and children, whose suffering was largely the result of the mistakes and crimes of a distant past, deeply moved Jesus' human heart and strongly appealed to his divine mercy. Jesus knew very well that he could never establish a lasting spiritual movement on a foundation of miracles. He had consistently followed the course of refraining from using his divine power. After the wedding at Cana, nothing supernatural or miraculous had occurred. Nevertheless, his heart was moved by the sight of this afflicted crowd. In the spiritual realm, a large host of heavenly servants, who always accompanied their incarnate Creator, stood ready. They were prepared to act with healing powers if their master gave them a sign. This was one of those moments in Jesus' earthly life when his divine wisdom and human compassion struggled so strongly in his judgment, that he sought refuge in appealing to the will of his heavenly Father. The apostles were also distressed, and it became too much for Peter. He begged Jesus to respond to their cry for help. Jesus replied, while looking down at all the sick people, "I have come into the world to reveal the Heavenly Father and to establish his kingdom here on earth. For this purpose, I have lived until this moment. If it be the will of him who sent me, and if it is not against my dedication to establishing the kingdom of heaven, then I would also wish for these children to be healed." Jesus had handed over the responsibility for his decision regarding healing to the will of his heavenly Father. Apparently, the Father's will did not object, for the Master's words were barely spoken when the assembled heavenly personalities sprang into action, and in a single moment, 683 men, women, and children were healed, completely cured of all their physical diseases or ailments. Never before or since has such a scene been witnessed on earth. And even for the watching heavenly servants, this creative wave of healing was a moving spectacle. But of all, Jesus was the most surprised. At a moment when his human interest and compassion were focused on the scene of suffering and need, he failed in his human consciousness to recall the warnings of his personalized adjuster regarding the impossibility of controlling spiritual forces under certain conditions and circumstances. Jesus desired that these suffering mortals be healed if it would not violate his Father's will. The Heavenly Father immediately decided that such an act of healing would not violate his will, and by this decision, the healing occurred. In the entire further life of Jesus on earth, such a mass physical healing of mortals did not occur again. As expected, the story of this miraculous healing spread throughout Galilee and Judea and to distant regions. Once again, Herod's fear was aroused, and he sent observers to report on Jesus, to find out if he was the former carpenter from Nazareth, or if he was John the Baptist risen from the dead. However, most of those who received physical healing that evening did not experience lasting spiritual benefit from this extraordinary manifestation of mercy. A small number were truly edified by this physical aid, but most of those present have talked for many years after about this miracle and the superpowers of the person Jesus. But they did not seek the spiritual kingdom. The healing miracles that occasionally accompanied Jesus' mission on earth were not part of his plan for proclaiming the kingdom. They were incidental to the fact that there was both a human and a divine nature in his body. These two natures sometimes unleashed an unprecedented combination of divine mercy and human compassion. However, these so-called miracles caused Jesus much trouble in the sense that they generated publicity, which prejudiced the people and gave him a general fame he did not seek. And unfortunately, today, there are too many charismatic leaders who offer Jesus to many gullible souls as a prosperity gospel. The desire for health or wealth is so strong in many individuals that they want to try this path. Their faith is mainly based on the persuasiveness of their leader and the desire for a better life. In most cases, these people become disappointed and disillusioned. Sincerely following Jesus has nothing to do with miracles, but is seeking the will of God and unconditionally serving your fellow man.